The night my family evacuated for a Category 4 hurricane, my father put my mother, my brother, the photo albums, and the silver cutlery into 2 cars. He left me behind with 3 pets, no electricity, and a window he boarded up from the outside, so I couldn't, as he said, get any ideas. I was 19 years old. I sat in a hallway closet with a yellow flashlight, 2 dogs, and a cat, listening to the roof breathe like something alive and trying to die. That was 7 years ago. This morning my phone lit up with 53 missed calls. My name is Evelyn Whitfield. I'm 27 now. I own a truck with my name on a magnetic sign on the door. I have a toolbox worth more than any car my father ever drove. And I own the house my grandmother spent 50 years filling with rosemary, thyme, and everything she quietly knew about the people she loved. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to the summer I understood what I was worth to my family and what I intended to do about it. We lived in my grandmother's house. That's the part people don't understand when I tell the story, so I'll say it clearly. The house on Sycamore Lane belonged to Ruth Calloway, my mother's mother. For bedrooms, a screened-in porch, herb garden planted in rows so straight they looked like they'd been measured with a ruler. My parents moved in when I was 6, after my father's construction business hit a rough patch. It's temporary, he told my grandmother. That was 13 years before the hurricane. The kitchen table seated 4. We were 5. Every night, I pulled a metal folding chair from the hallway closet and wedged it between the counter and my brother Jared's elbow. Nobody ever suggested buying a 5th chair. It just never came up. Like a lot of things that concern me, it never came up. Jared was 23 that summer. He sold cars at a dealership on the main road. He dropped out of technical college halfway through his 2nd year, tuition paid by my parents without a second thought. My mother announced his weekend shift promotion at dinner one night with the same voice she'd used to announce a college diploma. "That's my son," my father said, squeezing his shoulder. I cleared my throat. I got accepted into the plumbing apprenticeship, the one at the trade center. My mother passed the salad bowl to Jared. "That's nice, honey." My father didn't look up from his plate. The casserole had too much salt. I kept drinking water to fill the silence. At the far end of the table, Grandma Ruth set down her fork and looked at me the way she always did, like she was reading a page nobody else could see. "Good hands are an inheritance in this family," she said. My father chewed. My mother smiled at something on her phone. Jared asked if there was more bread. I washed the dishes alone. Through the window above the sink, I could see the garden. Rosemary, thyme, sage, planted in rows so precise they seemed deliberate as handwriting. Grandma Ruth carried a leather notebook in the pocket of her apron. She wrote in it every afternoon on the back porch in blue-black ink that slanted left. I never asked what was in it. I assumed it was recipes. Plant calendars. The kinds of lists old women make to remember things. I should have asked. The plumbing apprenticeship cost me $600 in tools and a background check. I paid both with money I had saved waitressing at the restaurant on Orchard Street. The only thing I needed from my parents was a signature, a parental guarantee because I was under 21. I asked my father on a Sunday morning while he was reading sports scores at the kitchen table. He turned a page. "Plumbing isn't a career, Evelyn. It's a backup plan." My mother appeared in the doorway. "Sweetheart, let her try." I thought for 1 second she was on my side. Then she pulled me into the hallway and whispered, "Don't embarrass your father in front of Jared." So I drove across town and asked Grandma Ruth. She read the form once, signed it, and handed it back without a speech. Then she said, "Bring your tools Saturday." The pipe under my sink has been leaking for 2 months. I fixed that pipe the following weekend. Copper fitting, quarter-turn valve, 45 minutes. My father walked through the kitchen while I was lying on my back under the sink. He stepped over my legs to open the refrigerator. From the doorway, Jared said, "You're seriously going to do this for a living?" I tightened the last connector and listened to the silence. The pipe had been dripping so long that the absence of the sound was louder than the water had been. "Yes," I said. "I am." Grandma Ruth was at the stove heating a kettle. She didn't say anything. She just put a cup of tea on the counter beside my wrench, as if the two things belonged together. That night I discovered she had listed me as her emergency contact on the house documents. She never mentioned it. I found out much later. The Saturday afternoons belonged to the two of us. That was the unspoken arrangement, like most of the good things between us. I arrived after my morning shift. She gave me gardening gloves that smelled like beeswax and sage, and we worked the herb beds until the light turned amber. She taught me the real names of things. Salvia officinalis, she'd say, splitting a sage leaf between her fingers. Officinalis means of the workshop. It was medicine before it was a condiment. She was a retired nurse. She talked about plants the way she talked about people, with precision and with a tenderness she'd never admit to. One Saturday, 1 week before the storm, the air was thick and sweet with jasmine from the fence. We were on our knees transplanting thyme when she said something that stayed with me. Your mother was a difficult child. Not bad. Difficult. She wanted things I didn't know how to give her. I waited. Grandma Ruth didn't repeat herself and didn't elaborate unless she intended to. I was a fair mother, she said. But fair isn't warm. Diane wanted warmth. I didn't know how. I didn't know what to say, so I kept digging. She reached into her apron pocket and put a heavy yellow plastic flashlight in my hand. Keep this. What for? When the lights go out, you'll need your own light. I laughed. Grandma, we have an emergency generator. The generator belongs to your father. She said it like a weather report. No judgment. Just fact. This flashlight is yours. Later, rinsing tools at the outdoor tap, I saw her on the porch with the leather notebook open on her knee. She was writing fast, faster than recipes require. When she noticed me watching, she closed it and tucked it away. Not yet, my love. Like someone closing a book they hadn't finished reading. I didn't push. I thought she'd show me when she was ready. I didn't know that by showing it to someone else, she already was. The storm had a name, but I don't use it. Names make things personal. What happened in that storm was geography. What happened in that house before the storm, that was personal. My father bought a chalkboard from the hardware store on Wednesday, 3 days before landfall. He mounted it beside the refrigerator and drew 2 columns in black marker. Left column, car 1. Right column, car 2. Under car 1, Glenn Jared Documents Toolbox. Under car 2, Diane's suitcases, photo albums, silver cutlery. I read the list twice. Then a third time more slowly, the way you reread a sentence that can't possibly say what it appears to say. My name wasn't in either column. Neither were the dogs. Neither was the cat. I found my father in the garage loading plywood into the truck. Someone has to stay, he said without stopping. Insurance won't cover the claim if the house is unoccupied. It's a Category 4 hurricane. This house survived Hugo. He took a nail from between his teeth. You'll be fine. Take the animals to the hallway closet. If it gets bad, stay away from the windows. I looked at him. Really looked. The way you look at a faucet that has been dripping so long you forgot it was broken. His hands were steady. His voice was flat. He had already decided. Inside, my mother was folding clothes into a suitcase. I stood in the doorway. Mom, someone has to watch the house. I could go. Jared could stay. She closed the suitcase with a zipper. Your brother works Monday. As if I didn't work. As if the apprenticeship I had worked 7 months for was a hobby I did between the important events of other people's lives. I walked to the back of the house. Grandma Ruth was standing in the kitchen doorway with both hands on her cane. She'd heard everything. Her jaw was so tight, I could see the muscle moving beneath her ear. Over my dead body, she said when my father came through the hallway. My father didn't slow down. It's not your decision anymore, Ruth. It's my house now. Grandma Ruth drew herself up. Her eyes went flat and still, like water that goes quiet before it freezes. That, she said quietly, is exactly what concerns me. Nobody else heard her. I heard every word, but I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. They left at 7 Saturday morning. The sky was green at the edges and yellow at the center, the kind of sky that makes birds go silent. My father loaded the last box. Jared sat in the passenger seat with his headphones on, staring at his phone. He didn't wave. My mother helped Grandma Ruth into the back seat of the sedan. Ruth resisted. I could see it from the porch. The way she gripped the car door. The way my mother's hand pressed firm against her back. Ruth turned to look at me through the rear window as the car backed out. She was mouthing something. The glass was up. I couldn't hear. She pressed her palm flat against the window. Then the taillights disappeared around the curve where the street bends toward the highway. My father was the last to leave. He came to my window with a sheet of plywood, a drill, and a box of 3-inch screws. I stood inside and watched the daylight shrink. First a rectangle, then a strip, then a sliver, then nothing. For screws, each one driving through the window frame with a sound like a fingernail on porcelain. So you don't get any ideas about leaving, he said through the wood. Then his boots on the gravel. The truck door. Then silence. I walked to the breaker panel in the hallway. Every switch was down. My mother had cut the main power on her way to the car. To protect the wiring, she'd said the day before. Except she hadn't done it the day before. She'd done it that morning. After Grandma Ruth was already in the car and couldn't argue. The house was dark. Not dark like dusk. Dark like sealed. The kind of dark where you can't tell if your eyes are open or closed until you wave your hand in front of your face. I found the yellow flashlight on my nightstand. It cut the hallway with a firm beam. Cookie pressed against my leg. Pepper whimpered from the closet. Moth was on the kitchen counter with her ears flat, watching the ceiling. At 11:14 that night, the first gust hit. I know the time because my phone still had charge. 23%. Let me tell you what a Category 4 sounds like from inside a dark house. It sounds like a freight train clearing its throat. Low first, then louder, then so loud that sound stops being sound and becomes pressure. In your ears, in your chest, in the spaces behind your eyes. The hallway closet was the safest place. No windows. Interior walls on all sides. I sat on the floor with Cookie on my left, Pepper on my right, and Moth curled in my lap, her claws pressing into my thigh each time the house groaned. The walls moved in long, slow waves. Above us somewhere, a roof tile lifted and slid down the shingles like a card descending a staircase. I called Grandma Ruth at midnight. She picked up on the first ring. My love. Her voice broke on those 2 words. I'm okay, Grandma. I'm in the closet. The dogs are with me. The walls are holding. She was crying. I had seen Grandma Ruth cry exactly once before, when her sister died. She cried in silence, the way people cry, who have practice. I try to stop them, she said. I tried. I know. I'm going to fix this, she said. Give me time. My phone read 9%. I have to go, Grandma. I love you. I love you more, and I have loved you longer. That was something she always said. It started when I was 4, and she never stopped. I hung up and placed the phone face down to save the battery. In the dark, I did what you do when there's nothing to do. I breathed. I counted. I remembered. I thought about a summer afternoon when I was 12 and my father spread a set of construction drawings across the kitchen table and taught me to read the elevation lines. That afternoon, he was patient. He pointed at the foundation marks and said, "This is where it starts. Everything else is held up by this." It was one of the only afternoons I could remember when he spoke to me like I was worth teaching something. That was the version of my father I kept looking for. I understood, somewhere in that dark closet while the roof breathed above me, that the man who drew straight lines and explained foundations was never the whole picture. He was just the part one kept choosing to frame. The winds eased around 4 in the morning. I opened the closet door. Moonlight came through the gaps in the boarded window in thin white lines like bars. The house had held. The garden was flattened. The power was still cut. Pepper pushed his nose into my palm like he was checking if I was still real. Something else had broken during the night. Not the roof. Not the walls. Something deeper. More structural. More permanent. The part of me that had been making excuses, that internal pipe that had been dripping for years, had finally burst. I didn't have the tools yet to fix it, but I knew I would. They came back 2 days later. My father pulled in first, tires crushing fallen branches. He went straight inside, checked the walls, inspected the attic, ran his hands along the baseboards, crouched near the water heater, opened and closed every kitchen cabinet. He was doing a house inspection. The house is fine, he said, coming back through the front door.
Good job.
Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Not, you must have been terrified. The house is fine. Like I was the night security guard, and my report was satisfactory. My mother wheeled her suitcase to the bedroom. It smells like humidity. We should open windows. To no one in particular. She didn't mention the plywood still screwed to my window. She didn't ask how I had slept, or if I had slept, or if I had eaten the 3 cans of cold soup I found in the pantry with a flashlight. Jared stayed in the truck for 20 minutes staring at his phone. When he finally came in, he grabbed a drink from the refrigerator and went to his room. I stood in the kitchen counting the seconds since anyone had spoken directly to me. I reached 400 before Grandma Ruth's taxi pulled up out front. She had taken a cab from the hotel. At 67 years old, she didn't ask anyone for a ride. She came through the front door, walked past everyone, and found me at the sink. She held me and didn't let go for a long time. She smelled like hotel soap and peppermint and something older, talc, linen, thyme. The smell that was simply her. I'm going to fix this, she whispered against my ear.
Give me time.
She had said the same thing on the phone during the storm, but standing in the kitchen with the morning light streaming and so bright it hurt after 2 days of dark, the words landed differently. She wasn't making a panic promise. She was making a plan. I didn't ask what kind. I was 19. I thought time meant things would gradually improve. I didn't know she meant it literally. That somewhere in that leather notebook the solution was already being written down. 3 months after the storm, I packed 2 bags. It didn't take long. I had a backpack of clothes, a toolbox, the yellow flashlight, 3 leashes, a cat carrier, and 6 years of knowing exactly what I was worth to the people in that house. I had finished my plumbing apprenticeship early in the top of my class, which surprised no one who had watched me work and surprised everyone who had never bothered to look. A company in Millbury hired me at a real wage with benefits. I found a studio apartment above a hardware store on Elm Street. $70 a month. Pets allowed. A leaking faucet in the kitchen. Perfect. The day I moved out, my mother stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. You're being dramatic, Evelyn. I'm being employed, I said. There's a difference. My father was on the couch watching preseason football. You'll be back in a month, he said to the television. Mark my words. In the yard, Grandma Ruth was trimming the rosemary. I hugged her, and she held my face in both her hands, her palms rough from 50 years of work, warm from the sun. She said it again. I'm going to fix this, my love.
Give me time.
3 years passed. I turned 22. I had been promoted twice, lead plumber on residential projects, then commercial. I had a 1-bedroom apartment that I'd moved into after my studio building sold. Cookie was slowing down. Pepper had gray around his muzzle. Moth ruled the apartment from the top of the bookshelf, like a small dictator. The life was small and mine, and I liked it exactly that way. I called Grandma Ruth every Sunday. She told me about her garden, her books, her neighbor Connie's hip replacement. She never mentioned the leather notebook. I never asked. Then the letter arrived. It came to my old studio address and was forwarded twice before it reached me. A thin white envelope with a blue logo in the corner I didn't recognize. The return address read, Southeast Mutual Insurance, Claims Division. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter with my work boots still on. Dear Miss Whitfield, thank you for your participation in claim number 4471, B for hurricane damage to the property at 114 Sycamore Lane. This letter confirms the allocation of $47,000 delivered to the primary policyholder, Glenn R. Whitfield.
I read it again.
Then a third time. Then I put the letter on the counter and pressed both hands flat on the surface because the floor felt uneven, even though it wasn't. I had never filed an insurance claim. I had never signed anything related to the property on Sycamore Lane. I had been 19 years old, sitting in a closet with my phone at 9% while the house tried to shake itself apart. I called the insurance company. The representative was efficient and completely useless until I said, I need to see the claim form with my name on it. It arrived by email 3 days later. There it was. My full legal name. My signature on a line marked witness at location confirms occupant was present and took reasonable measures to protect the property during the named storm event. The signature wasn't mine. It was close. Someone had practiced. $47,000. That was what my night in the dark was worth to my father. Not my safety. My signature. I didn't call Glenn.
I didn't call Diane.
I picked up the phone and called Grandma Ruth. She answered on the first ring. Before I could say anything, she said, "I know. Marshall told me. We're already working on it." Marshall Raines had his office on the second floor of a brick building downtown, above a barbershop that had been there since before I was born. The staircase smelled like shaving cream and old wood. His door had frosted glass with gold letters. M. Raines, attorney. Wills and Estates. He was 62, silver-haired, with glasses he adjusted every time he changed subjects. His desk was clean except for a coffee mug, a lamp, and a manila envelope thick enough to prop a door open. "Your grandmother was the most meticulous woman I've ever worked with," he said, leaning back. "She came to see me 2 months after the storm. October 14th. I remember. Because she brought a jar of fig preserves, and she never brought gifts unless she was about to ask for something complicated. Ruth had changed her will. The house at 114, Sycamore Lane, the garden, the land, everything would go to me.
Not to Diane.
Not shared. Only to me. She had dictated the language herself. She also asked me to retain copies of the insurance claim your father filed. He slid a photocopy across the desk. She obtained them through a public records request. Your grandmother understood paperwork the way a surgeon understands anatomy. He told me she had suspected the forged signature immediately. She'd had it verified. She'd documented everything. Why didn't she report it? I asked. Marshall took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. She said to me, "If I go after Glenn now, Diane will cut me off from Evelyn. I'll lose them both." He put his glasses back on. "She chose to wait," she said. "When I'm gone, Evelyn will need this more than I need it now." I stared at the slowly turning ceiling fan. 3 clicks before I could speak. "She planned all of this?"
"She didn't plan it," Marshall said.
"She prepared for it. There's a difference. My mother called that Wednesday. Diane Whitfield didn't make midweek calls unless she needed something. Birthdays, holidays, and favors, that was her rotation. She suggested lunch. Her voice had a warmth I hadn't heard in years. It almost sounded real.
I said yes.
I knew I shouldn't have. The documents from Marshall were fresh in my mind. The manila envelope was still on my kitchen table. I knew what my father had done. I knew what my mother had permitted. But there is something that happens when the person who hurt you offers even the smallest fragment of what you've been needing. You lean toward it even knowing the hand might close. At the restaurant, she asked about my apartment, the work, the dogs. She said wonderful 4 times. She admired my truck. She noticed a scar on my hand from a copper fitting that had slipped. The first time she had ever noticed a mark on my body that wasn't there from birth. Then, between her second cup of coffee and the check, she stirred her coffee 3 times with 2 sugars and said, "Your grandmother has seemed so tired lately. I'm worried about her health. Have you talked with her much about the house or anything like that?" 3 stirs. She always gave 3 stirs when she was circling what she actually wanted to say. I looked at my mother across the table. 51 years old, reading glasses pushed up on her head, asking a question she was trying very hard to make sound casual. She wasn't apologizing. She was gathering information. "We talk about her garden mainly," I said. Diane nodded slowly. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes after. Engine off. Hands on the wheel. The pie had been good. The conversation had been a performance. Connie, Ruth's neighbor of 40 years, called the following week. She'd been watching my father visit 3 times that week, sitting at Ruth's kitchen table with a folder, asking her to sign something about the house title. He wanted co-ownership. His argument was practical. The house needed roof work, foundation reinforcement, the kind of expensive maintenance a woman Ruth's age couldn't manage alone. He'd take care of it. She just had to add his name to the deed. For tax purposes, he'd told her. What did Grandma say?
She said no.
3 times. She's polite with him, but she said no. That should have been the end. But Glenn Whitfield didn't hear no. He heard not yet. What he did next was quieter and uglier. Connie told me the following week. Glenn had been talking in town, at the hardware store, at the church breakfast. Nothing direct, just comments. Ruth has been forgetting things. She left the stove on Tuesday. It's hard to watch. None of it was true. Ruth Calloway could recite her medications, her social security number, and every plant in her garden in Latin. She organized her own taxes. Read a novel a week. Beat Connie at Scrabble every Thursday. But reputation in a small town is like wallpaper. Easy to put up, hard to remove. And Glenn was putting it up one conversation at a time. I called Grandma Ruth that night. She answered on the second ring, in the middle of a sentence with someone on the other line, switched cleanly, and recited exactly what she'd had for dinner. Roast chicken, glazed carrots, 1 glass of wine. She was reading a Florence Nightingale biography. Your father is getting desperate, she said, still as still water. I could hear a page turning on her end. She was still reading while she talked to me. That means we're getting close. Close to what? The end. She didn't elaborate. She asked me about a bathroom renovation I was doing on Maple Street. She wanted to know about the pipe material. We talked copper versus PX for 15 minutes. She didn't sound afraid once. I visited her for Christmas. The house smelled exactly as it always did in December. Pine from the wreath on the door, cinnamon from something on the stove, and beneath all of it the permanent bass note of her home, old wood, lemon oil, and the faintest trace of the lavender she kept in every drawer. We sat on the back porch with tea. The garden was sleeping, just brown stalks and mulch. But the sage was still green. It didn't care about winter. Grandma Ruth said it never did. I wasn't a warm mother, she said, looking at the garden with her cup in both hands. I've told you before, but I need you to understand it now. Your mother wanted something I didn't know how to give her. She was a child who needed praise, and I was a woman who believed praise had to be earned.
I was wrong about that.
Not completely, but enough. Grandma, she married your father because he told her she was special every day out loud. I never did. So when she had to choose between his voice and mine, she chose his. And I can't blame her completely, because I created the silence she was trying to fill. She paused. But understanding someone is not the same as trusting them. Then she reached under her chair and produced the leather notebook. It was darker now, soft with use, a rubber band holding it closed. When the time comes, give this to Marshall. He'll know what to do with it. When the time comes. She looked at me, clear eyes, completely present. I'm 81, my love. The time comes whether you name it or not. I took the notebook. It was heavier than I expected, dense with pages, with years, with everything she'd been recording in that left-leaning hand. At the door she held my face in both palms and said, "You are the best thing I got right, even though I got it late." I drove home with the notebook on the passenger seat and a feeling in my chest like holding a door that was about to close. Marshall called on a Tuesday in March. I was under a kitchen sink in a duplex on the east side, replacing a garbage disposal, when my phone rang. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. I slid out from under the cabinet, wiped my hands on my jeans, and answered. His voice was the same as always, measured, precise, but there was a weight in it that hadn't been there before. Your grandmother passed this morning. In her sleep. Connie found her. I sat down on the stranger's kitchen floor. A spiderweb hung from the drain trap. The disposal hummed faintly because I hadn't finished disconnecting the power. Evelyn, are you there? I'm here. I wanted you to hear it from me first.
Before Diane.
Before Glenn. Before anyone who might bring you this news wrapped in their own agenda. I drove to the house. Connie was on the porch with a glass of water. She wasn't drinking, her eyes red. She'd let herself in with the spare key Ruth had given her years ago. Just in case, Ruth had said. Ruth was in her bed. Covers pulled up, one hand resting on a closed book. The room smelled like peppermint and beeswax, the way it always had, and the way it always would until someone opened the windows and let the world in. I sat in the chair beside the bed and didn't cry. Not because I was strong. Because the feeling was too large to cry. It filled every part of me and left no room for anything to escape. 2 hours later, my father called. Your grandmother left some papers. We need to sort out the house situation. When do you have time? No, I'm so sorry. No, are you okay? He went straight to the papers. The house. The asset. My mother called 30 minutes after. I'm devastated, she said, and I believed that part, only that. Then, has anyone mentioned a will? I looked at the leather notebook on Ruth's nightstand beside a glass of water and a pencil with a chewed eraser. That night, I opened the notebook for the first time. Ruth Calloway wrote the way she spoke. Clean, direct, not one unnecessary word. The notebook was organized by date, entry after entry in blue-black ink, each one beginning with a number and a month. She had recorded everything. September 14th. Glenn told Evelyn she had to stay during the storm. Diane did not object. Jared said nothing. September 15th, 11:40 p.m. Evelyn called. She was in the closet. She was calm. I was not. The entries continued after the storm. Dates, times, observations written with the precision of a woman who spent 40 years recording patients' vital signs. October 3rd. Glenn filed the insurance claim. He told the adjuster someone was in the house during the storm. He used Evelyn's name. October 8th. I asked Marshall to pull the claim form. The signature is not Evelyn's. October 14th. Newell signed. Connie and Pastor Grimes as witnesses. Marshall filed it. Then the entry shifted. Glenn's visits. Conversations with Diane. Things Ruth heard when people forgot she was in the room or assumed she wasn't listening. January 12th. Glenn told Bill Hayward at the hardware store that I left the stove on. I haven't used the burner in 3 weeks. I used the microwave. March 5th. Diane asked me about the house deed. I said nothing. She asked again. I said nothing. Louder. The last dated entry was 3 weeks before she died. February 22nd. I am tired, but the notebook is finished. Marshall has what he needs. Evelyn has what she will need. I didn't do this out of anger. I did it because someone needed to keep the record, and no one else was doing it. So, I kept the record. In the last page, folded once and tucked between the back cover and the leather, was a handwritten letter. Same ink, same left-leaning slant. Dear Evelyn, you deserved more. Now you will have it. Don't be kind to people who were not kind to you. Be fair. There is a difference. The house is yours, not because you earned it. You did, but that's not why. It's yours because I trust you to protect what I couldn't protect while I was living. I'm sorry it took me so long. With everything I had, Grandma Ruth. I read that letter 4 times. Be fair, not kind. It took me until the 3rd reading to understand the difference. Kindness can be performed. Justice requires evidence. Marshall scheduled the will reading for 2 weeks after the funeral. He sent formal notices by certified mail with return receipt to Glenn, Diane, and Jared at their current addresses. The morning of the reading, I bought a blazer. Gray, fitted, on sale at a department store in Millbury. It was the first blazer I'd ever owned, not because I needed armor, but because Grandma Ruth had wanted me to walk into that room like it already belonged to me.
Because it was about to.
The night before, I sat at my kitchen table with the documents spread in front of me. The will, the insurance claim, the notebook, the letter, Marshall's card, a legal pad on which I had written nothing because there was nothing left to plan. Moth jumped onto the table and settled herself directly on the notebook, the way cats do, positioning herself on the most important thing in the room, as if she knew. I let her stay. Glenn arrived at Marshall's office 5 minutes early in a sport coat I'd never seen and freshly polished shoes. He sat across from me and put both palms flat on the table, fingers spread, a man claiming territory. Diane came next, the buttons on her blouse one off at the collar, so the fabric sat slightly crooked. She sat beside Glenn without a word. Jared was last, for minutes late in a wrinkled polo, taking the chair farthest from everyone. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at anyone. He looked at his hands. Marshall opened the documents. The first section covered personal property, furniture, the old sedan, some jewelry split between Diane and me. Glenn's name didn't appear anywhere. So far, so good, he murmured. Marshall turned the page. What follows concerns the real property at 114 Sycamore Lane. He said it, and the room changed. Not the temperature, not the light, the air itself, the way a room changes when everyone in it stops breathing at the same time. I, Ruth Elaine Calloway, being of sound mind and body, hereby bequeath the real property at 114 Sycamore Lane, including the land, structure, and all permanent fixtures, solely and exclusively to my granddaughter, Evelyn Grace Whitfield. The words hung in the air like smoke. Glenn looked at Diane. Diane looked at Marshall. Jared looked at the table. Connie looked at me. I looked at my hands. They were steady. Grandma Ruth's had been too, the day she signed this. This is insane, Glenn said.
He stood.
The chair scraped the wood floor with a long, ugly sound. She was confused. She was 80 years old. She didn't know what she was signing. Mrs. Calloway was examined by her primary physician 3 days before signing, Marshall said without raising his voice. Dr. Harmon certified her mental capacity in writing. The will was witnessed by Mrs. Bill and Pastor Grimes. Both confirmed she was alert, oriented, and under no coercion. I don't care. There is also a letter, Marshall said, which Mrs. Calloway instructed me to read aloud in the presence of all parties. He unfolded a sheet of paper. Same blue-black ink. Same left-leaning hand. To my family. He read it clearly, the way a man reads something that has been waiting a long time to be said out loud. I write this because some things must be spoken aloud, even when I'm no longer in the room to say them. On September 15th, my son-in-law Glenn left my granddaughter alone in this house during a Category 4 hurricane. He boarded her window from the outside. My daughter Diane left in the last car and did not object. Evelyn sat in a closet with 3 animals and a flashlight I had given her while the roof shook and the power had already been cut by her own mother. Diane covered her mouth. Her shoulders folded inward. I leave this house to Evelyn. Marshall continued reading, because a family that abandons a daughter in a storm does not deserve the shelter she protected. Glenn sat back down slowly, like a man realizing the chair might not hold him. There is also the matter, Marshall said, closing the letter and opening a second folder of an insurance claim filed in Evelyn's name without her knowledge or consent. Claim number 4471B, $47,000 delivered to Glenn Whitfield. The signature on the witness attestation does not match Evelyn's known signature. Glenn's face went the color of wet cement. Jared's head lifted for the first time. He looked at his father. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite surprise. Recognition. The look of someone who had always suspected and never confirmed. Grandma Ruth wrote that letter in blue-black ink, the same pen she used for everything, grocery lists, plant calendars, justice. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just wrote it down and made sure the right people were in the room. The room was silent for 11 seconds. I counted them. Then I reached into my bag and placed a key on the table between us. Silver, worn, with a strip of electrical tape on the handle that still read Ruth in black marker. This is my house now, I said. You have 30 days to move out. That is the legal notice period. Marshall will send the formal letter this afternoon. Glenn leaned forward. You can't do this. She can, Marshall said. The notice will be formalized in writing before close of business today. I maintain that house. I fixed the roof. I kept up the garden. You lived there rent-free for 13 years in a house that was never yours, I said, while telling people the owner was losing her mind. His mouth opened.
Closed.
The sport coat was too big in the shoulders. I kept my voice level. Grandma Ruth never raised hers. I wouldn't either. About the insurance claim, I said. I didn't file it. I didn't sign it. The signature is not mine. You have 2 options. Return the $47,000 to Southeast Mutual voluntarily, or I file a fraud complaint. Those are the choices. Glenn's hand trembled on the table. Not with rage. With something worse, the slow arrival of consequences. Diane looked at me. Her mascara had tracked down both cheeks. The misaligned buttons. The swollen eyes. She looked like a woman standing in the wreckage of something she helped build.
I'm your mother, she said.
I know, I said. That's why this hurts. I didn't say which part. I didn't need to. Jared spoke for the first time. His voice was soft, rough at the edges.
I'm sorry, Evelyn.
I looked at my brother, the one who had stayed in the truck staring at his phone while our father sealed my window, the one who never called during the storm, the one who, I now knew from the insurance documents, had signed his own name on the form as co-witness. I know you are, I said, but regret doesn't give me back that night. Glenn stood. He didn't look at Marshall, didn't look at me, didn't look at anyone. He straightened his coat and walked to the door and pulled it closed behind him. Not a slam, a slow, deliberate pull, as if trying to preserve a dignity he had already forfeited. The latch clicked. The fluorescent light hummed. Connie exhaled. That month I moved into 114 Sycamore Lane with a key that still had Ruth's name on the tape, my toolbox, cookie and moth, and the yellow flashlight that had been sitting on my apartment shelf for 7 years with its batteries changed exactly once. Glenn and Diane had taken everything that wasn't fixed. Furniture, curtains, the kitchen clock. But they left what mattered, because they didn't know what mattered. The herb garden, overgrown but alive. The porch swing creaking on the same note. The linen closet, still smelling like lavender. And 4 screw holes in my old window frame where the plywood had been nailed shut. I ran my finger over each one. Then I sanded the frame, filled the holes with putty, and painted it white. Clean, bright white, the kind that looks intentional. And then I opened the window and left it open. Glenn repaid the $47,000 to the insurance company voluntarily, choosing that over a fraud investigation. Marshall called it the rational decision. I called it the minimum. Jared moved out separately, stopped speaking to Glenn entirely, and sent me a message that said, I know it's not enough, but I'm trying. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was punishing him, because I didn't yet know what to say. Some answers need more than 30 days. I put the leather notebook on the living room shelf. Next to it, the yellow flashlight. Side by side, like 2 volumes of the same story. I don't keep the flashlight because I need it in the dark anymore. I keep it where I can see it because there are things you hold on to not because they're necessary, but because they remind you of who held them first. It's October now. 7 months since the reading. The sage in Grandma Ruth's garden survived the summer. The drought, the heat, 2 weeks when I forgot to water because I was on a commercial job in Millbury. It didn't care. Sage doesn't ask permission to keep living. It just does. I'm sitting on the back porch in the same chair where Ruth sat the Christmas she gave me the notebook. The tea is peppermint, her brand from the tin she kept above the stove. The tin is almost empty. I'll buy more next week or switch to chamomile. The ritual matters more than the flavor. Cookie is at my feet. She's 11 now, nearly deaf, her hips so bad I carry her up the porch steps. She doesn't mind. She sleeps in a patch of sun that hits the boards at 4 in the afternoon, the same patch where Ruth used to read. Moth is on the porch rail, watching a squirrel with the patience of an experienced hunter. Pepper is gone. 1.5 years now. I planted rosemary where I buried him, near the fence. It bloomed in June. My phone is on the armrest. It rings sometimes, a number I don't recognize. I look at it for a moment, and then let it go. I'll answer when I'm ready. In my time. In my house. With every window I have open, letting in all the light there is. Before, I sat in the dark because someone else cut the power. Now I sit on a porch because the sunset is worth watching. Grandma Ruth left me a house and a notebook and a flashlight and a letter that said be fair, not kind. But what she actually left me was simpler than all of that. She left me the record. The proof that she had been watching, every Saturday afternoon in the herb garden, every Sunday phone call, every entry in blue-black ink, watching and writing and waiting for the moment when the truth would matter more than the peace of staying quiet. She kept the account, so I wouldn't have to. And when it was time, she handed it to me and said, "Now you finish it." I did.